This is the story of a boy named Ayan, a boy who never imagined that a few silent moments inside a coaching institute would stay with him for years. This story is inspired by real events. Some names and small details have been changed to protect privacy, but the emotions, the awkwardness, the regrets, and the memories are real. If you've ever liked someone without having the courage to say a single word, you might see a part of yourself in Ayan. This is his story. He was not the kind of boy teachers remembered first. In class, he sat somewhere in the middle rows, never too close to the front, never too far at the back. His notebooks were usually half complete, his handwriting changed depending on his mood, and his test marks stayed in that quiet area where nobody praised you too much and nobody scolded you too badly. He was not failing. He was not shining either. He was simply there. His name was Ayan. In 9th grade, Ayan had never thought of himself as intelligent. Not seriously. Sometimes, when a teacher asked a question and he knew the answer by chance, he would feel a small spark of pride inside him. But that spark always disappeared quickly, because the next question would come, and he would be lost again. His friends called him lucky. Sometimes they meant it kindly, sometimes they did not. Ayan did not mind much. He had learned to laugh before anyone else could laugh at him properly. That was his way of surviving school. If someone said, "Bro, you didn't study again?" he would smile and say, "Of course not. I believe in miracles." And somehow, during the final exams that year, a miracle happened. He studied, but not like the toppers studied. He opened books late at night, read important questions, watched short lectures, underlined things he barely understood, and prayed that the paper would be kind. He did not have a master plan. He had guess papers, half confidence, and a strange belief that maybe, just maybe, the questions would come from the parts he had touched. And they did. One paper after another, things kept falling in his favor. The essay he memorized came. The math question he practiced once appeared with different numbers. The biology diagrams were familiar. Even in chemistry, where he usually felt as if every formula belonged to another planet, he managed to write enough. When the result came, Ayan refreshed the page again and again, thinking the website had made a mistake. 91%. He stared at the screen. His younger cousin shouted first. "Ammi, Ayan Bai got 91. Within minutes, the house changed. His mother's tired face brightened in a way he had not seen for a long time. His father, who had been sitting quietly with his phone and a worried forehead, looked up slowly. For a second, he did not say anything. Then, he took the phone from Ayan's hand, checked the result himself, and smiled. It was not a big smile, but for Ayan, it was enough. That evening, relatives called. Aunties who had never asked about his studies suddenly said, "We always knew he was smart." Uncles gave advice as if they had personally trained him. His mother made tea twice. His father told one of his friends on the phone, "Yes, 90 plus. The boy has potential." Potential, that word began following Ayan around the house. At first, it felt good. Then, it became heavy. His family did not see luck. They saw hidden genius. They decided the boy had been careless before, but now, he had proved what he could do. If he got 91 with little effort, what could he get with proper guidance? What if he joined a good coaching center? What if he became serious? What if this result was the beginning of something big? Ayan wanted to tell them the truth. He wanted to say, "I don't know how it happened." But every time he saw his mother smiling at the result card, the words stayed inside him. Their family was not doing well then. Not in the kind of way people announce, but in the quiet way families hide. Bills stayed on the table longer than before. His father took phone calls in another room. His mother sometimes counted money twice before sending someone to buy groceries. Small things disappeared from their routine. Cold drinks, weekend snacks, random orders from outside. Nobody said they were struggling. But Ayan noticed. That was why, when his father enrolled him in one of the better coaching centers in the area, Ayan felt a strange mixture of pride and guilt. The monthly fee was not small. He knew that. His mother said, "Don't worry about money, you just study." But that sentence made him worry more. The coaching building stood on a busy road, squeezed between a pharmacy and a printing shop. From outside, it did not look special. A narrow entrance, a staircase with chipped tiles, posters of past toppers on the walls, and a reception desk where students stood with bags hanging from one shoulder. But inside, to Ayan, it felt like another world. Students moved everywhere, holding notebooks, laughing in groups, discussing tests, asking about teachers. Some wore branded shoes. Some had expensive bags. Some carried themselves with a confidence Ayan did not understand. Everyone seemed to know what they were doing. Ayan did not. On his first day, he wore a plain shirt, faded jeans, and shoes that were clean but old. His hair refused to sit properly, no matter how much water he used. He arrived too early and spent 10 minutes pretending to read the notice board. His class was on the second floor. When he entered, most seats were already taken. He sat near the side wall and opened his notebook. Around him, students talked easily. Someone asked another person about a physics worksheet. A boy behind him was telling a joke. Two girls in the front row were sharing chips from a small packet. Ayan looked down at his blank page and wrote the date. That was all. The first week passed quietly. He attended classes, copied notes, understood some things, missed others, and came home tired. His teachers were better than school teachers, sharper and faster. They explained with confidence, and students responded quickly. Ayan often needed more time, but he was too shy to ask questions. At home, his father would ask, "How is coaching?" Ayan would say, "Good." His mother would ask, "Are teachers good?" He would say, "Yes," and then he would go to his room, open his notebook, and stare at pages full of words that looked more serious than he felt. He tried. Not perfectly, but he tried. Then, one afternoon, everything changed in the smallest possible way. It was a normal day. The corridor was crowded because one class had just ended and another was about to begin. Students were moving in both directions, some rushing, some laughing, some standing in groups near the classroom doors. Ayan was walking slowly, holding his notebook against his chest, trying not to bump into anyone. That was when he saw her. She was standing near the railing with two other girls, one hand holding her phone, the other adjusting the strap of her bag. She wore loose baggy pants and a simple top. Nothing too flashy, but somehow she looked different from everyone around her. Confident, but not loud. Pretty, but not in a way that seemed practiced. Her hair fell naturally around her face, and when she looked up for a moment, Ayan noticed her eyes. They were the kind of eyes people write bad poetry about and still fail to describe. Clear, bright, soft, like pearls catching light. Ayan looked away immediately. His heart, for no reason, began acting as if he had been caught doing something wrong. He walked past her and entered his class. For the next 10 minutes, he did not hear a single word the teacher said. He kept seeing that moment again. The railing, the baggy pants, the phone in her hand, those eyes. He did not know her name. He did not know her class. He did not even know if she had noticed him. But when coaching ended that day and he walked down the staircase, he found himself looking around without meaning to. She was not there. Still, the corridor felt different. The building felt different. Even the old staircase with chipped tiles felt like it had become part of a story he had not planned to enter. That evening, when his mother asked, "How was coaching?" Ayan paused for half a second. Then he said good. And for the first time, he meant something else entirely. Part 2 the next morning, Ayan woke up 10 minutes earlier than usual. He did not realize why at first. He simply looked at the ceiling for a while before sitting up, rubbing his eyes and reaching for his phone. The room was quiet. Outside, he could hear the distant sound of a vegetable seller calling out prices and the familiar clinking of teacups coming from the kitchen. His mother was already awake. She always was. Ayan got ready for school as he did every other day, but something about the routine felt different. While buttoning his shirt, he looked in the mirror a little longer than usual. His hair refused to cooperate. He wet it again. It still looked the same. "Forget it," he muttered. School passed slowly. Teachers explained chapters. Friends argued over football. Someone got punished for talking during class. Everything happened exactly as it always did. Yet every now and then, without warning, his mind wandered back to the coaching corridor. Those eyes. That brief moment. He found himself wondering ridiculous things. What subject did she study? Which class was she in? Did she always stand near that railing? Did she even remember seeing him? The questions annoyed him. He barely knew anything about her. In fact, he knew nothing at all. Still, the questions stayed. When school ended, he went home, changed his clothes, grabbed his coaching bag, and left. This time, before stepping outside, he sprayed a little perfume. Not because of anyone. At least that was what he told himself. The perfume had been sitting on his shelf for months, a birthday gift from one of his cousins. He rarely used it. Today he did. His mother noticed. "You smell nice." Ayan looked away. Just found it. She smiled without saying anything else. When he reached coaching, he was earlier than usual. Students were still arriving. Some were climbing the stairs. Others stood outside talking. Ayan walked up slowly, not because he was tired, because he kept looking around without wanting anyone to notice. Nothing. He reached his classroom, sat down, opened his notebook. The class started. Halfway through the lecture, he forgot about everything else. Physics had a way of demanding complete attention. By the time the teacher finished, his brain felt exhausted. Students began leaving their seats. Ayan packed his notebook slowly. When he stepped into the corridor, she was there, standing almost in the same place as yesterday. This time, she was laughing at something one of her friends had said. The sound was soft, not loud enough for him to hear the words, only enough to know she laughed easily. He looked for barely a second, then quickly looked away. He kept walking. As he passed by, he felt something strange, almost as if someone had looked at him. He resisted the urge to turn around. He didn't. Not until he reached the staircase. Only then did he glance back. She was already talking to her friends again. Maybe she had never looked at him. Maybe he had imagined it. Days passed. Then another week. Without realizing it, Ayan had developed a routine. Reach coaching. Pretend not to look. Accidentally look anyway. Find her somewhere in the corridor. Go home. Repeat. Nothing happened. No conversation. No introduction. Not even a smile. Just tiny moments. Sometimes she walked past with headphones around her neck. Sometimes she carried a thick chemistry book. Sometimes she leaned against the railing while talking to her friends. Sometimes she wasn't there at all. Oddly enough, those were the days Ayan noticed the most. Whenever she wasn't there, the corridor somehow looked emptier. He hated admitting that to himself. "This is stupid," he whispered once while climbing the stairs. It was. He barely knew her. His best friend Hamza noticed something before anyone else did. One afternoon during school lunch break, Hamza looked at him carefully. "Why are you dressing better these days?" Ayan looked confused. "What? You, what about me? You ironed your shirt." "So? You've never ironed your shirt. I always do." Hamza laughed. "No, you don't." Ayan rolled his eyes. "Shut up, Hamza wasn't finished. And those shoes, what about them? You clean them. I clean them. No, I do. You definitely don't." Ayan threw a tissue at him. Hamza dodged it easily. "There is definitely a reason. There isn't. There is. There isn't. Hamza leaned closer. Coaching? Ayan froze for the tiniest fraction of a second. Barely noticeable. But noticeable enough. Hamza's eyes became wide. Oh, lower your voice. So there is someone. There isn't. There is. There isn't. There definitely is. Ayan sighed. I don't even know her. Hamza blinked. You don't know her? No, you've never talked? No, then what's happening? I don't know. Hamza stared for 2 seconds before bursting into laughter. You are unbelievable. I know. You don't even know her name? No, you need help. I know. You've officially become a movie character. I'm not. You are. Ayan laughed despite himself. For some reason, saying it out loud made the whole thing sound even more ridiculous. The following week, Ayan bought a new shirt. Not expensive, just nicer than the ones he usually wore. Then another one. Then a pair of white sneakers he had wanted for months. His father noticed while looking at the shopping bag. Needed new shoes? My old ones were worn. His father nodded. Good, Ayan looked away. The truth was, his old shoes were perfectly fine. Gradually, something else began changing. He started caring about little things. His hair, his watch, his backpack, even the pen he carried. Every coaching day felt strangely important, as if today might be different. Today might be the day something happened. But nothing ever did. Only eye contact. Short, unexpected, gone within a second. Sometimes he wasn't even sure if it had actually happened. Maybe she had simply looked in his direction. Maybe there had been someone standing behind him. Maybe he was imagining everything. Still, every accidental glance stayed in his mind far longer than it should have. At night, while trying to study, he would suddenly remember one of those moments. Then, shake his head. Focus, he tried. He really did. But his thoughts had begun wandering into places where equations and formulas no longer reached. And somewhere inside the same coaching building, completely unaware of the storm she had quietly started in the mind of an awkward 16-year-old boy, a girl with pearl-like eyes continued living her ordinary days, never realizing that someone had slowly begun measuring time by the moments he happened to see her. Part 3, the strange thing was, nothing actually happened. There were no conversations, no exchanged names, no dramatic moments where their books fell at the same time, or where they accidentally ended up sitting together. If someone had watched them from a distance, they would have seen nothing more than 2 students attending the same coaching center. Yet for Ayan, every coaching day had quietly become the most anticipated part of the week. He never admitted it. Not even to himself. He still told everyone he was going there because the teachers were good, because the tests mattered, because his parents were paying so much money. All of those things were true, but they were no longer the whole truth. One Friday afternoon, while standing in front of his wardrobe, Ayan realized he had changed clothes 3 times. He held up a black shirt. No, a white one. Too formal. Then finally chose a light blue shirt he rarely wore. He looked at himself in the mirror. It still looked like Ayan, nothing special. He sighed. What exactly are you expecting? No answer came. The coaching building was busier than usual that day. A monthly test had just ended. Students were filling the corridors, discussing answers with complete confidence. I wrote option C. It was definitely B. No, the teacher taught this. You'll see when the key comes. Voices echoed everywhere. Ayan hated post-test discussions. He never joined them. He always felt worse afterward. So he slipped quietly through the crowd. Halfway down the corridor, he saw her. She was standing near one of the classroom doors with 4 other girls. She wasn't speaking. She was listening while one of her friends dramatically explained why the chemistry paper had been unfair. Every few seconds, she smiled. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to make the people around her smile too. Ayan slowed down without realizing it. Not enough to stop. Just enough. Then, for the first time, she looked directly at him. Not beside him, not through him. At him, for less than 2 seconds. Then, both of them looked away. Ayan continued walking as if nothing had happened. Inside, his heart was racing. What was that? He replayed the moment at least 15 times before reaching home. Maybe she had recognized him. Maybe she had simply looked around. Maybe no. He threw his bag onto the bed. You are overthinking again. He knew he was. It didn't help. From that day onward, those little moments happened more often. Sometimes they passed each other on the stairs, sometimes outside the classrooms, sometimes near the reception desk. Neither of them smiled. Neither of them spoke. But every now and then, their eyes met for a second longer than strangers usually looked at each other. Ayan began wondering if she recognized him now. Not knew him, recognized him. There was a difference. Recognizing someone meant your brain quietly said, "I've seen this person before." That was enough for him. His daily routine slowly changed without anybody noticing. He started leaving home 10 minutes earlier. Not because he needed to. Because arriving early meant the corridors were quieter, which somehow increased his chances of seeing her. Some days she was already there, some days she wasn't. On the day she arrived after him, Ayan somehow always noticed. Not intentionally. His eyes simply lifted toward the staircase whenever footsteps echoed through the corridor. He hated that he did that. But he kept doing it anyway. One evening, while waiting outside his classroom for the teacher, Hamza suddenly appeared. Their coaching timings overlapped once a week because Hamza attended a different subject there. "There you are." Ayan looked up. "What are you doing here?" "My class got cancelled." Hamza leaned against the wall. So what?" "Show me." "What?" "The girl." Ayan nearly dropped his notebook. "Have you lost your mind?" "What?" "I'm not pointing at someone." "Why?" "Because that's weird." "It is not. It is." Hamza looked around dramatically. "There are literally 200 students here. So? I'm not going to magically know." "Good, you're impossible, I know." Hamza crossed his arms. "I still don't understand." "What?" "You don't know her." "No, you've never talked." "No, you don't even know her name." "No, and yet you've bought new clothes." Ayan stared at the floor. Hamza laughed. "You're finished. I hate you." "No, you're just 16. Ayan couldn't help smiling. Maybe Hamza was right. Maybe this whole thing was just another strange part of growing up. Weeks continued passing. Then, one afternoon, something unexpected happened. Ayan was walking toward the water cooler during the short break. The corridor was almost empty. Most students had already entered their classrooms. He filled his bottle, closed the cap, turned around, and almost bumped into her. She was only a few steps away, closer than they had ever been before. For one tiny second, neither of them moved. She stepped slightly to one side. "So sorry." Her voice was soft, natural, as if apologizing to strangers was something she did without thinking. Before Ayan's brain could process what had happened, he answered, "No, it's okay." His own voice sounded unfamiliar, almost quieter than usual. She gave a small, polite nod, then continued walking. That was it. 5 seconds. Maybe less. But Ayan stood there holding his water bottle for another 10. His heart was beating so loudly he was convinced somebody nearby could hear it. He looked back once. She had already disappeared into another classroom. That evening, while lying in bed, he kept hearing those 2 simple words. "So sorry." Ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. He laughed at himself. It was literally just an apology. Yet it was the first time he had heard her voice, soft, calm, exactly how he had imagined it. For reasons he couldn't explain, that tiny moment stayed with him longer than any conversation he had ever had with anyone else. He closed his eyes, smiled to himself, then quickly frowned. No, he whispered into the darkness. This is getting out of hand. Outside his bedroom window, the city continued as it always had. Cars passed. Dogs barked in the distance. Somewhere, a television played behind a neighboring wall. Everything was ordinary. Everything was the same. Except that tomorrow, without admitting it to anyone, Ayan already knew he couldn't wait to go back to coaching again. Part 4 the next morning, Ayan woke up before his alarm. He opened his eyes and immediately remembered yesterday. So, sorry. 2 ordinary words. Words he had heard thousands of times from different people. Yet somehow, when she had said them, they refused to leave his mind. He covered his face with a pillow. This is embarrassing. If anyone could hear his thoughts, they would probably laugh. He barely knew her. She had apologized because they almost bumped into each other. That was all. Nothing more. Nothing less. Still, his heart had decided otherwise. Days continued passing. The strange little routine between them never changed. They never spoke again. But the eye contact became familiar, not frequent enough to feel intentional, not rare enough to be accidental every time. Sometimes, while leaving class, Ayan would notice her standing with the same group of girls near the corridor, railing. Sometimes she would be walking downstairs while he was climbing up. Sometimes they would simply pass each other. For 1 second, maybe 2. Then both would continue walking. Every single time, Ayan found himself replaying it later. Did she look first? Or did he? Did she recognize him? Or was she simply looking around? He never found an answer. One Saturday afternoon, Hamza caught him staring into the mirror before coaching. "What are you doing?" Ayan jumped. "You scared me." Hamza laughed. "You've been looking at yourself for like 3 minutes. I wasn't. You literally were. I was fixing my hair. You fixed it 6 times. Ayan looked away. "It still looks bad. It looks exactly the same." Hamza walked closer. "You know what your problem is?" "What?" "You think she's going to notice every tiny detail." Ayan stayed quiet. Hamza smiled knowingly. "She probably won't notice if your hair is 1 centimeter left or right. I know, but you'll still fix it." "Yeah." Hamza burst into laughter. "You are gone." That evening, Ayan reached coaching earlier than usual. The reception area was almost empty. Only a few students sat on the benches scrolling through their phones. He climbed the stairs slowly. The corridor felt unusually quiet. For a brief moment, he actually enjoyed it. Then he saw her. She was standing alone. No friends. No phone. Just looking out through the railing toward the busy road below. For the first time, she looked ordinary. Not the confident girl always surrounded by people, just another student waiting for class. Ayan almost walked past. Almost, but just then she turned around. Their eyes met. Neither of them looked away immediately. 1 second. 2, 3. Then Ayan quickly lowered his gaze and walked into his classroom. His heartbeat refused to calm down. What was that? He opened his notebook. Read the first line 3 times. Couldn't understand a single word. The teacher entered. The lecture started. Nothing stayed in his head. That night, while brushing his teeth, Ayan suddenly smiled at his own reflection, then immediately stopped. What are you smiling for? He didn't know. Maybe because that eye contact had lasted longer. Maybe because he imagined it meant something. Maybe because he wanted it to mean something. Teenagers had a strange talent. They could build entire stories out of 3 seconds. Ayan was becoming an expert. A week later, something happened that he would remember for years. Classes had just ended. Students filled the corridors. Everyone was trying to leave at the same time. Someone laughed loudly near the staircase. Another group argued about an upcoming test. Teachers walked past carrying attendance registers. It was noisy. Busy, chaotic, Ayan was walking through the crowd when he saw her coming from the opposite direction. There was enough space for both of them. As they came closer, their eyes met. For reasons he would never understand, Ayan decided this was the perfect moment to look. Confident, Hamza always joked that he looked scared of everyone. Today, he wouldn't. So instead of quickly looking away like always, he held the eye contact, just a little longer. Then he smiled. Not a normal smile, not even a friendly one. It was the awkward kind of smile people make when they're trying far too hard to look cool. The moment it happened, he knew. Oh no, she looked slightly confused. Not offended, not amused, just surprised. She gave a tiny polite expression that was impossible to read and continued walking. Ayan kept walking too, but inside, his soul had already left his body. What did I just do? By the time he reached home, he had replayed the moment at least 50 times. Why did I smile? What was that face? Why couldn't I just act normal? He buried his face in his pillow. I actually looked creepy. The embarrassment physically hurt. He wanted to travel back in time by exactly 4 seconds. The next coaching day was worse. Every time he thought he might see her, he remembered the smile. Every single time. What if she thinks I'm weird? What if she thinks I was trying to flirt? What if she figured out I'm that fake account? His imagination became his biggest enemy. He created possibilities faster than reality ever could. Meanwhile, reality remained completely silent. She continued attending classes, talking to her friends, walking through the same corridors, living exactly as before. Only Ayan's mind had changed. Still, despite all the embarrassment, he found himself doing the same thing again, looking for her without wanting to, not staring, just hoping. Sometimes it was enough to simply know she was somewhere in the building. That strange feeling made no sense, yet it was becoming part of his everyday life. And although Ayan didn't realize it yet, the most awkward moment of his teenage years was still waiting for him, just a few weeks away. Part 5. For the next few days, Ayan avoided looking at her. Or at least, he tried to. The problem with trying not to look at someone was that you became painfully aware of where they might be. If he heard laughter near the railing, his eyes wanted to look. If a group of senior students walked past, he wondered if she was among them. If he noticed someone wearing baggy pants from the corner of his eye, his heart reacted before his brain did. Every single time, he stopped himself. No, not again. Not after that smile. He was convinced he had embarrassed himself enough for one lifetime. The coaching routine carried on. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, classes, tests, homework. Everything looked exactly the same. Only Ayan had changed. He no longer stood in the corridor after class. He packed his bag quickly, left immediately. He even started taking a different staircase whenever he could. Not because he disliked seeing her, because he was afraid of seeing her. There was a difference. At home, things were becoming more difficult. One evening, while looking for a notebook in the living room, Ayan heard his parents talking in the next room. Their voices were low. His father's sounded tired. "We'll manage this month somehow." "I know," his mother replied softly. But next month, there was silence. Then his father sighed. "The coaching fee is important. We can't stop it now." "I know. We'll cut somewhere else." Ayan stood frozen. He wasn't supposed to hear that conversation. Quietly, he picked up his notebook and returned to his room without making a sound. That night, he couldn't concentrate on studying. His books lay open on the desk, but his thoughts stayed with his parents. He looked around his room. The new shoes, the shirts, the perfume. Suddenly, they all felt unnecessary. He whispered to himself, "I should have just worn the old ones." The following day, his mother called him into the kitchen before he left for coaching. "I made your favorite paratha. You didn't have to. I wanted to." She smiled as she placed it on the table. "You'll study well, right?" Ayan looked at her. There were faint dark circles beneath her eyes. She smiled anyway. He nodded. "I will." For the first time since joining coaching, he actually meant those words without thinking about anyone else. Even so, some habits refused to disappear. One afternoon, after class ended, Ayan stepped into the corridor and saw her at the far end. She was talking to two girls. One of them was laughing loudly while explaining something with exaggerated hand movements. The girl with the pearl-like eyes laughed too. It wasn't a dramatic laugh, just soft enough to make everyone around her smile. Ayan looked for barely a second, then looked away. Progress, he thought. Maybe, a few days later, while waiting outside his classroom, he overheard two boys talking. "She's in second year." "So she's a senior?" "Yeah, oh," Ayan pretended not to listen. But inside, a small piece of the puzzle had appeared. She was 1 year older. That explained why he had never seen her in his classes. It also explained something else. Why she always seemed more confident, more comfortable. She had already spent a year in this place. He was still trying to remember where the washrooms were. The strange distance between them continued. Sometimes their eyes met. Sometimes they didn't. Neither of them made any effort to change that. Ayan slowly convinced himself that maybe this was better. Some stories were nicer from a distance. Some people looked more beautiful when they remained strangers. It sounded poetic, until Hamza ruined it. So, Hamza asked one afternoon while they walked home from school. "Still no conversation?" Ayan shook his head. "No, you smiled again?" Ayan immediately looked horrified. "No." Hamza laughed. "I had to ask. I'm never doing that again. It was that bad? You have no idea." Hamza grinned. "I wish I had seen it. I would have changed schools. I believe you." For a few moments they walked in comfortable silence. Then Hamza spoke again. "You know what? Maybe you should stop overthinking." "I've tried." "No, you've thought about trying," Ayan smiled. "There's a difference. There is." Hamza kicked a small stone along the road. "You don't even know if she remembers your face." Ayan didn't answer, because that was exactly what he kept wondering. A week later, the coaching building was unusually crowded. Ayan had arrived a little late because of traffic. Students were already inside their classrooms. He climbed the stairs quickly, checking the room numbers as he went. 201, 202, 203. Where was his class? He frowned. Had they changed rooms today? He kept walking. Finally, he saw an open classroom door. Without thinking much, he stepped inside. The room was full. Almost every seat was occupied. For a split second, everything felt wrong. The students looked older, no familiar faces. The teacher wasn't there yet. Then, someone near the back laughed. A girl said dramatically, "Oh my God, come here, sit in my lap." The entire class burst into laughter. Ayan froze. His face instantly turned red. Only then did he realize wrong classroom. He had walked into the senior batch. Her batch. He looked toward the voice. She was there, sitting with her friends. One of her friends was still laughing after making the joke. But Ayan didn't look at the girl who had spoken. His eyes landed on the girl with the pearl-like eyes instead. She wasn't laughing. She wasn't making fun of him either. She simply looked at him with an expression he couldn't understand. There was something gentle in it, almost as if she wanted her friend to stop. Or maybe she just felt sorry for the awkward boy standing in the wrong classroom. Ayan couldn't tell. He quietly mumbled, "Sorry," turned around, and walked out as quickly as he could. The corridor had never felt longer. His ears burned. His hands felt cold. By the time he reached the staircase, only one thought remained in his head. She probably thinks, I'm just a kid. Part 6. Ayan did not sleep well that night. Not because of homework, not because of the upcoming monthly test, because every time he closed his eyes, he saw that classroom again. The laughter. The open door. The words, come here, sit in my lap. He buried his face in his pillow. Why? He groaned quietly. Why does everything embarrassing happen to me? The more he thought about it, the worse it became. He remembered the way everyone had looked at him, the awkward silence before he apologized, the way he had almost run out of the classroom. But more than anything else, he remembered her expression. She hadn't laughed. That somehow made it even worse. If she had laughed, he could have blamed her. Instead, she had simply looked at him. Calmly, almost kindly. That look stayed with him far longer than the laughter. The next day at school, Hamza immediately noticed something was wrong. You look like someone failed you. Ayan shook his head. Worse than failing? I entered the wrong class, that's it? It was her class. Hamza stopped walking. Oh, and one of her friends, Ayan repeated the whole story, exactly as it had happened, not adding anything, not hiding anything. When he finished, Hamza didn't laugh immediately. He just looked at him. Then he sighed. You know what? What? I honestly don't think it's a big deal. Ayan stared at him. It isn't? No, I walked into the wrong class. So? They laughed. So? They think I'm a child. Hamza shrugged. Or what? They forgot about it 5 minutes later. Ayan frowned. No, bro. Hamza smiled. Nobody thinks about us as much as we think about ourselves. Ayan stayed quiet. The sentence sounded true, but his brain refused to believe it. That evening, for the first time since joining coaching, Ayan didn't want to go. He actually stood near the front door holding his bag, hoping someone would say, "You don't have class today." Nobody did. His mother handed him a lunchbox. Come home safely. He nodded. Okay. The walk to coaching felt unusually long. Every step brought him closer to the place where he had embarrassed himself. By the time he reached the building, he had already made a decision. I'm not looking at her, not once, not today, maybe not ever again. He climbed the stairs, eyes fixed on the floor, entered his classroom, sat down, opened his notebook. Perfect. No unnecessary thoughts. No distractions. The lecture began. For almost 2 hours, everything went well. Physics formulas, numericals, diagrams. His mind stayed exactly where it needed to be. When class ended, he packed his bag faster than usual. No stopping, no waiting, straight downstairs. He stepped into the corridor, walked toward the staircase, kept looking ahead. Halfway there, someone walked past from the opposite direction. He noticed only the shoes at first, white sneakers, then baggy black pants. His heart immediately knew. His brain reacted a second later. Don't look. Don't. He didn't. He kept walking. Their shoulders passed within a few feet of each other. For the first time in weeks, he didn't even glance in her direction. Not once. When he finally reached outside the building, he exhaled deeply. I did it. A strange feeling settled inside him. Not relief, not sadness, something in between. Days turned into another week. Then, another. Ayan continued doing the same thing. If she appeared, he looked away. If he heard her friends laughing, he kept walking. If he sensed she might be nearby, he focused on anything else. The notice board, the staircase, his phone, the floor. Anything. He wasn't angry with her. He wasn't even embarrassed anymore. He was simply done, or at least he wanted to be. One evening, while sitting at his desk pretending to study, he opened Instagram without thinking. His thumb hovered over the search bar. then stopped. The fake account. It was still there. The conversation wasn't long, just a few messages. Real account se aao. Fake pe itne followers honge? Honge tumhare. Masla kya hai? Nahi, bas aapko followers chahiye? That was where everything had ended. He stared at the chat for almost 5 minutes, then quietly pressed the settings button. Deactivate account. Instagram asked, "Are you sure?" He looked at the screen. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then, he tapped. Yes, the account disappeared. Just like that. A strange calm settled over him. It felt like closing a book he had never really started reading. A few minutes later, he opened his real account. He wasn't even following her. She wasn't following him. There was no connection between them at all. Still, he searched for her profile, found it, looked at it silently. Then, blocked. Instagram asked again, "Are you sure?" He smiled faintly. Yeah, this time there was no hesitation. One tap. Done. He placed his phone face down on the table. The room became very quiet. Outside, rain had started falling lightly. Tiny drops tapped against the window. His mother called from the kitchen. "Ayan, tea? I'm coming." He stood up. For the first time in months, he wasn't thinking about coaching. The following weeks felt different. Not dramatically. Just lighter. He still attended every class. Still solved worksheets. Still worried about tests. Sometimes, he accidentally saw her across the corridor. But now, he simply walked past. No searching. No waiting. No wondering. Whether she noticed him anymore, he had no idea, and for the first time he wasn't trying to find out. Slowly, almost without realizing it, the excitement that had once made him iron his shirts, clean his shoes, spray perfume before every class, and arrive 10 minutes early, began fading into something much quieter. A memory that hadn't ended yet, but had already started becoming part of the past. Part 7 winter arrived quietly, not the kind with snow, the kind that settled over the city through cold mornings, gray skies, and the comforting smell of tea coming from every house. Ayan had always liked winter. It made ordinary days feel softer. People walked a little faster. Classrooms became quieter. The evening breeze carried the smell of roasted corn from roadside stalls. Life somehow slowed down. The coaching center changed too. Students started wearing hoodies and jackets over their uniforms. Teachers entered classrooms rubbing their hands together before picking up the marker. The windows stayed closed most of the time, yet the room still felt cold. Final exams were getting closer. That meant one thing. Everyone had become serious. Even the loudest students now spent breaks discussing chapters instead of cricket scores. The laughter in the corridors had grown quieter. The notebooks had become thicker. The pressure had become visible on every face, including Ayan's. His father no longer asked casual questions after dinner. Instead, every evening sounded almost the same. How much syllabus is left? Quite a bit. Revision started? A little. You'll do well. I'll try. His father always smiled after saying those words, but the smile never reached his eyes anymore. Ayan noticed. He always noticed. Sometimes, late at night while solving physics numericals, he would hear his parents talking softly in the other room. Never loudly, never arguing, just discussing expenses. Electricity, rent, school fees, coaching, life. He had stopped buying anything unnecessary. Whenever his friends suggested eating burgers after school, he politely refused. Whenever he wanted something online, he closed the app before reaching checkout. Nobody told him to do that. He simply understood. Coaching became less about people and more about time. Teachers moved faster than ever. Finish question 5. Turn to page 72. Important for finals. Mark this. Every lecture felt like a race. Ayan had started studying harder too, not because he suddenly loved studying, because he couldn't bear the thought of disappointing the people who believed in him, especially his parents. Sometimes he wondered if 91% had been a blessing. Sometimes it felt like a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. One afternoon, after finishing mathematics class, he stepped into the corridor. Students hurried in every direction. Someone shouted a friend's name. Another teacher walked past carrying a stack of answer sheets. The building was as busy as ever. Almost without thinking, Ayan looked ahead. She was there, standing near the reception desk. Her hair was tied back today. She was explaining something to one of her friends while holding a notebook against her chest. For the first time in weeks, Ayan didn't stop. He didn't even slow down. He simply noticed her and kept walking. It surprised him, not because he had forgotten her, because the feeling had changed. There was no rush inside his chest anymore, only a quiet familiarity, like passing an old place you once visited often. A few steps later, he heard someone call his name. Ayan. He turned around. Hamza came jogging down the corridor. "I've been looking everywhere." "What happened? You coming to the library tomorrow?" "I think so. We're revising chemistry." Ayan nodded. "I'll come." Hamza looked at him carefully. "You okay?" "Yeah, you sure? Why?" "You've been quieter lately." Ayan smiled faintly. "Just tired." Hamza believed him, or maybe he simply chose not to ask more questions. The weeks passed quickly. Soon, every classroom wall was covered with revision schedules. Students counted the remaining lectures instead of the completed ones. Teachers constantly reminded everyone, "Finals are very close. Don't waste time. Every day matters." The coaching center had become strangely emotional. Nobody said it aloud, but everyone knew. Soon, this routine would end. These classrooms, these corridors, these familiar faces. Everyone would leave. Some would join colleges. Some would move to different cities. Some friendships would survive. Most wouldn't. At 16, nobody really thought about goodbyes until they quietly arrived. One rainy evening, classes ended later than usual. The sky outside had already turned dark. Students gathered near the entrance, waiting for the rain to slow down. Ayan stood near one of the windows, watching tiny drops race each other down the glass. Someone laughed nearby. A teacher reminded everyone not to run on the wet stairs. The atmosphere felt strangely peaceful. Then, without meaning to, he noticed her again. She was standing outside beneath the small shade near the entrance, waiting, just like everyone else. Rain reflected softly in the streetlights around her. For a brief moment, the entire world seemed unusually quiet. Not because anything extraordinary happened, because nothing happened at all. She looked toward the road. Ayan looked toward the rain. Two strangers, sharing the same evening, living completely different lives. The rain slowed after a few minutes. Students began leaving one by one. She walked away with her friends. Ayan watched the road instead. Only when she had disappeared into the crowd did he quietly pick up his bag. By the time he reached home, he couldn't remember what color her jacket had been. That surprised him. A month earlier, he would have remembered every detail. December arrived. Mock exams began. Coaching attendance dropped because many students preferred studying at home. One afternoon, Ayan walked through the familiar corridor and realized something. He hadn't seen her in several days. Maybe she was absent. Maybe their timings had changed. Maybe he had simply missed her. The realization didn't hurt. It simply felt strange, like noticing that a clock you had heard ticking every day had suddenly gone silent. Life continued anyway. Classes continued. Revision continued. The calendar continued moving toward the final exams. And somewhere beneath all the formulas, revision notes, and late-night study sessions, Ayan slowly began understanding something that no teacher had ever explained. Some people arrive in your life without ever truly entering it. They don't become friends. They don't become strangers again either. They simply become quiet memories, long before they're actually gone. Part 8 January arrived, carrying the quiet kind of pressure that every student understood. The countdown had begun. There were no more "we'll finish" this next week. No more "there's still plenty of time." Every teacher now spoke with the same urgency. Revise, practice, don't leave anything for the last night. The coaching center, once filled with casual conversations and laughter, had become noticeably quieter. Students now walked through the corridors holding revision files instead of snacks. Even the reception area, where people usually waited while talking to friends, had become a place where heads stayed lowered over notebooks. Ayan had changed too. He still reached coaching on time, still sat in the same seat, still carried the same blue notebook. But somewhere along the way, his attention had finally returned to the reason he had joined in the first place: his parents. Every time he solved another past paper, he remembered his father quietly transferring the coaching fee every month. Every time his mother left a cup of tea on his desk without saying a word, he remembered the conversation he had accidentally overheard weeks ago. "We'll manage somehow." Those words never really left him. One evening, while solving mathematics questions, the electricity went out. The room became silent. Only the ceiling fan slowly came to a stop. Ayan leaned back in his chair. Outside, the neighborhood disappeared into darkness. A few children laughed somewhere down the street. Someone started a generator nearby. His mother entered with a candle. "Take a little break. I'm almost done." "You've been saying that for 2 hours." She placed the candle beside his books. Its soft light covered the pages with a warm glow. His mother looked at him for a moment. "You've become more serious." Ayan smiled. "I guess. I'm happy." She gently fixed a page that had folded over. "Just don't forget to sleep." After she left, Ayan stared at the candle. A few months ago, he would have spent half this evening wondering whether he'd see a certain girl tomorrow. Tonight, he was worried about chemistry. Life changed quietly. Sometimes you didn't notice until much later. At coaching, everyone had become familiar faces. Not friends, not strangers, just people he saw often enough to recognize. The boy who always carried 2 water bottles, the girl who borrowed extra worksheets, the twins who somehow answered every question together, the security guard who greeted everyone with the same sleepy smile, the receptionist who never forgot anyone's attendance, and her. She had quietly become another familiar face in the building. No longer someone he searched for, simply someone who happened to exist within the same routine. Sometimes she crossed the corridor. Sometimes she didn't. Sometimes weeks passed without them seeing each other. The world didn't stop. Neither of them noticed. Or perhaps neither of them showed it. One afternoon, after finishing class, Ayan walked toward the notice board. Students had gathered around it. The final revision schedule had been posted. People squeezed closer, trying to find their batch. Ayan stood at the back, waiting for the crowd to thin. While waiting, he heard someone say, "They're combining some classes next week." Another student replied, "Only until the finals." Someone sighed dramatically, "I can't wait for exams to end." Another answered, "I can." The small conversation made Ayan smile. Everyone wanted exams to finish. Yet nobody seemed ready for everything else that would end with them. Later that evening, Hamza and Ayan sat together in the library. Books covered almost the entire table. Neither of them had spoken for nearly 20 minutes. Finally, Hamza closed his chemistry book. "I'm tired. You've solved 1 chapter." "I know, I'm still tired." Ayan laughed quietly. Hamza stretched his arms. You remember that girl? Ayan looked up. What girl? The coaching one. There was a pause. Then Ayan shrugged. Yeah, what happened? Nothing? Nothing? Literally nothing. Hamza smiled. You finally moved on? Ayan thought about the question. Had he? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Hamza leaned back in his chair. You know what I think? What? I think you never really liked her. Ayan frowned. What? You liked the idea of her. The sentence stayed between them for several seconds. Hamza continued. You didn't know her favorite color. No, you didn't know what music she liked. No, you didn't know what made her laugh. No, you didn't know anything. Ayan looked down at his notebook. Hamza wasn't being cruel. He was being honest. You just created a version of her in your head. Ayan quietly nodded. Maybe. Hamza smiled. That's normal. Is it? Yeah, we all do it at this age. For some reason, that made Ayan feel lighter. The following week was one of the last before coaching would pause for finals. The building somehow felt different. Students exchanged notes. Teachers wished everyone good luck. Some classmates took pictures together. Others promised to stay in touch. Promises made at 16 often sounded permanent. Life usually had other plans. When Ayan left class that afternoon, he walked through the corridor a little more slowly than usual. Not because he expected anything, because he suddenly realized he might never walk through this building again after the exams. The chipped staircase, the faded classroom numbers, the old notice board, even the broken drinking water cooler. Everything had become strangely familiar. At the bottom of the stairs, he pushed open the glass door leading outside. Cold winter air greeted him. As he stepped onto the footpath, someone exited the building behind him. He instinctively moved slightly to one side to make space. She walked past, close enough for him to notice the familiar baggy hoodie she was wearing. Neither of them looked at each other. Neither of them spoke. They simply walked in opposite directions. Two paths crossing one last ordinary afternoon. Ayan continued toward the bus stop. After a few moments, curiosity almost made him turn around. Almost, but he didn't. Instead, he smiled to himself. A small, peaceful smile. Not because something had happened. Because nothing needed to happen anymore. Some chapters in life weren't meant to become love stories. Sometimes they were simply there to teach you how quietly a memory could begin. Part 9, the last week before the coaching break arrived, almost unnoticed. Nobody announced it. Nobody counted it aloud. Yet everyone could feel it. The teachers had stopped introducing new topics. Every lecture was now filled with revision, past papers, and reminders. Don't forget Chapter 6. Practice the numericals again. The examiner likes this question. Students wrote everything down as if every sentence carried a secret to passing the exams. Ayan listened more carefully than ever before. His notebook had become much neater over the past few months. Even his handwriting looked calmer. Looking back at the first few pages, he almost smiled. Those pages belonged to a different version of him. At home, life continued quietly. His father had started coming home later than usual. Some nights, dinner became cold before he arrived. His mother never complained. She simply reheated the food and waited. One evening, Ayan found his father sitting alone on the balcony after dinner. The city lights flickered in the distance. Neither of them spoke for a while. Then his father asked, "Scared?" "A little." His father nodded. "I used to be scared before exams too." "You?" His father laughed softly. "I wasn't born old." Ayan smiled. "I know." His father looked out at the road below. "You know what helped me?" "What?" "I stopped thinking about the result." Ayan frowned. "How?" "I couldn't control the result." He paused. "But I could control whether I opened my books tonight." The words were simple, almost ordinary. Yet, Ayan remembered them. The next afternoon, coaching felt strangely emotional. Not because anything special was happening, because everyone knew these ordinary days were almost over. The reception desk was crowded with students asking about exam schedules. Teachers stood outside classrooms answering last-minute questions. Friends exchanged photocopied notes. Some students promised to make WhatsApp groups for revision. Others planned study sessions together. The building buzzed with quiet determination. Ayan walked through the corridor carrying 2 thick books against his chest. Without thinking, he looked toward the railing where she often stood. It was empty. He kept walking. During the short break, Hamza found him near the water cooler. "You heard?" "Heard what?" "They're closing coaching after Friday." "Until finals?" "Yeah," Ayan nodded. "I figured." Hamza took a sip of water. "We should probably study instead of pretending." "I already am." Hamza laughed. "You've changed." "Have I?" "A lot." "How?" "You actually solve homework now." Ayan smiled. "I have no choice." "You also stopped talking about." Hamza stopped. Ayan looked at him. Her. For a second, neither of them said anything. Then Ayan shrugged. "I guess." Hamza studied his face carefully. "You miss seeing her?" The question caught him off guard. He thought about it honestly. Not the version of himself from 3 months ago, the version standing here now. Maybe. Hamza raised an eyebrow. "Maybe? I don't miss her." He searched for the right words. "I think I'll miss this place." "The routine?" "Yeah. The possibility?" Ayan looked surprised. "What do you mean?" Hamza smiled. "Every coaching day there was always the possibility you'd see her." Ayan stayed quiet. That was exactly it. The possibility. Nothing ever happened, yet every day had carried the chance that something might. After Friday, even that chance would disappear. The final lecture before the coaching break felt unusually short. The mathematics teacher finished solving one last question. Then placed the marker on the desk. "I've taught you everything I could." The classroom became completely silent. "The rest depends on your effort." He looked around the room. "Don't panic during the exams. Sleep properly and trust yourselves." For a teacher known for never smiling, his final words felt unexpectedly warm. The students applauded softly. Ayan packed his bag. One by one, everyone began leaving the classroom. He walked into the corridor. The familiar walls suddenly felt different. He passed the notice board, the staircase, the old reception desk. He wondered how many times he had walked through this exact hallway without ever paying attention. Now he noticed everything, even the small crack running across one corner of the wall. As he reached the stairs, he heard footsteps coming from above. Instinctively, he looked up. She was walking downstairs with 2 of her friends. One of them was saying something that made the others laugh. She smiled quietly, the same calm smile he had seen so many times before. For a brief second, their eyes met. There was no awkwardness anymore. No panic, no forced confidence, no strange smile. Just a simple glance between 2 people who had crossed paths many times. Nothing more, nothing less. Ayan gave the smallest nod without even realizing it. It wasn't planned. It wasn't dramatic. She gave a polite, almost invisible nod back as she continued walking. Within seconds, they had passed each other. That was all. No music, no confession, no miracle. Just 2 students walking in opposite directions inside a coaching center that would soon become another memory. Ayan stepped outside into the cool evening air. The sun was beginning to set. Orange light reflected from the windows of nearby buildings. Students scattered in different directions, each carrying their own worries about the exams ahead. He stood there for a moment, then took one last look at the coaching building. He smiled, not because he was happy it was over, not because he was sad, because he suddenly realized something. Sometimes, the most unforgettable memories are made from moments that seemed completely ordinary while they were happening. With that thought, He adjusted the strap of his backpack and began walking home, unaware that the next time he returned to this road, everything would feel just a little different. Part 10. The coaching center closed the following day. Just like that. No farewell ceremony. No speeches. No final group photo. The classrooms were locked, the lights were turned off, and a small notice on the entrance door simply read, "Classes will resume after the board examinations. Best of luck to all students." It felt strange how something that had become such a big part of Ayan's life could end with a single printed sheet of paper. For months, his evenings had followed the same routine. School, home, tea, coaching, homework, sleep now. Suddenly, there was no coaching. The evenings became unusually quiet. His study table slowly transformed into a battlefield. Physics books lay open beside chemistry notes. Mathematics past papers covered one corner. Biology diagrams filled loose sheets of paper. Sticky notes were everywhere. Sometimes Ayan looked at the mess and laughed. A few months ago, he would have given up after 10 minutes. Now he could sit there for hours. Not because studying had become easy, because responsibility had quietly replaced motivation. There was a difference. Motivation came and went. Responsibility stayed. One evening, while revising chemistry, his mother entered carrying a cup of tea. She placed it beside him without saying anything. Then she noticed the coaching identity card lying near his books. "You forgot to put this away." Ayan picked it up. The small plastic card had his photo on it. The same awkward photo taken on his first day. His hair looked terrible. He smiled. His mother noticed. "What?" "I looked so nervous." "You were, I guess." She sat on the edge of the bed. "Are you?" He understood what she meant. "About the exams?" She nodded. "A little." She gently placed her hand on his shoulder. "We're already proud of you." Those words stayed in the room long after she left. The first board exam arrived before he felt ready. Students filled the school courtyard carrying transparent pouches and admit cards. Some revised until the very last minute. Others stared blankly at the walls. Teachers walked around reminding everyone to stay calm. Ayan sat at his desk inside the examination hall. The paper was placed face down in front of him. His hands felt colder than usual. The invigilator spoke. "You may begin." The room filled with the sound of turning pages. Ayan took a deep breath, turned his paper over. "Read the first question." A small smile appeared on his face. He knew it. He picked up his pen and began writing. Days turned into weeks. One exam ended. Another began. Urdu, English, physics, chemistry, biology, mathematics. Each paper carried its own anxiety. Each evening ended with students asking the same questions. "What did you write for question 5? Was the answer 3.2 or 3.4? The McHugh on page 2. Ayan stopped joining those conversations after the third paper. Whatever he had written, he had written. Nothing would change now. Without coaching, life felt oddly empty, not because he missed studying there, because he missed the routine. Sometimes, while returning home from school after an exam, the bus passed the same road where the coaching center stood. The building looked exactly the same. Students from other batches still climbed the stairs. The pharmacy next door was still crowded. The printing shop still displayed colorful admission posters. Life had continued without waiting for him. Every time the bus passed that road, his eyes automatically looked toward the building, not expecting anything. Just looking. One afternoon, after finishing another paper, Hamza called. "Done? Yeah, how was it? Better than expected." "Same." There was a short silence. Then Hamza laughed. "You know something?" "What?" "I actually miss coaching." Ayan smiled. "I do too. Not the studying. No, the people. Yeah, the routine." "Exactly." Hamza hesitated. "And what?" "The mystery." Ayan laughed for the first time in days. "You'll never let that go, will you?" "No, I told you." I know. Nothing happened. I know. You still think it's funny? I think you'll laugh about it one day. Ayan looked out of the window. Maybe the final exam ended on a warm afternoon. As students walked out of the examination hall, the atmosphere felt completely different. Some shouted with excitement, others threw rough papers into the air. Friends hugged each other. Someone yelled, "Freedom!" The word echoed across the school grounds. Ayan smiled. Months of pressure disappeared almost instantly. For the first time in a long while, he had nothing to study that evening. No worksheets, no revision, no timetable. Nothing. When he reached home, he placed his bag beside the desk, then looked around his room. It suddenly felt unfamiliar, without books spread everywhere. He opened the drawer to put away some loose papers. As he moved a stack of notebooks, something slipped onto the floor. His coaching identity card. He picked it up. For a few seconds, he simply looked at it. Then, almost without thinking, he smiled. Not because of the classes. Not because of the tests. Not even because of the girl with the pearl-like eyes. He smiled because that little plastic card reminded him of a version of himself that no longer existed. The boy who had walked into coaching wearing old shoes and carrying too much self-doubt. The boy who had spent weeks overthinking eye contact. The boy who believed one awkward smile could ruin everything. That version of him felt strangely distant now. He placed the card back inside the drawer, closed it gently. Outside, the evening sun painted the neighborhood in soft shades of orange. Summer was beginning. The exams were over. Results were still months away. And somewhere in the city, a girl whose name had once occupied so much space in his thoughts was simply living her own life, completely unaware that she had quietly become one of the most unforgettable chapters in someone else's story. The chapter had ended. At least, that's what Ayan believed. Part 11 summer had a strange way of slowing everything down. The alarm clock that had once dragged Ayan out of bed before sunrise now stayed silent on the bedside table. There were no rushed breakfasts, no coaching classes waiting in the evening, no stack of worksheets demanding attention before midnight. For the first time in months, he had time. At first, it felt wonderful. He slept late, watched football with Hamza, helped his mother with small things around the house. Sometimes, he even sat on the roof after sunset, watching birds disappear into the orange sky while the city slowly grew quieter. It felt peaceful. For exactly 1 week. After that, he became restless. It turned out that routines left behind empty spaces, and empty spaces had a habit of filling themselves with memories. One afternoon, while cleaning his study table, Ayan found an old mathematics worksheet from coaching. The teacher's red handwriting covered the top. Revise question 7. He smiled. Question 7 had terrified him back then. Now it looked surprisingly easy. He folded the sheet and placed it inside a drawer. A few minutes later, he found another paper, then another. Soon, the entire desk was covered with reminders of the past few months, attendance slips, practice tests, a faded timetable, even a small receipt from the printing shop beside the coaching center. He hadn't realized how many little pieces of that place had quietly followed him home. His mother walked into the room carrying freshly washed clothes. Cleaning? Trying to. She looked at the papers scattered everywhere. "You kept all of these?" "I guess." She smiled. "You've become sentimental." Ayan laughed. "I don't think so. You definitely have." She left the room before he could argue. He looked back at the papers. Maybe she was right. That evening, Hamza called. "Want to play cricket? I'll come in 20. Hurry up." "Why?" "Because if you're late, you're fielding near the drain." Ayan laughed. "I'm coming." The neighborhood ground looked exactly the same as always. Uneven grass, Broken boundary wall, children arguing about whether a catch had bounced. Someone had brought cold drinks. Someone else had forgotten the bat. Life felt wonderfully normal again. After the match, Hamza and Ayan sat on the pavement eating ice cream. Neither of them spoke for a while. Then, Hamza suddenly asked, "You ever wonder what everyone's doing now?" "Who?" "The coaching people." Ayan shrugged. "Probably sleeping," Hamza laughed. "I mean after exams, I don't know. You think they'll all join the same colleges?" "Probably not." Another silence settled between them. Then Hamza looked sideways. "And her?" Ayan sighed. "You really enjoy bringing this up." "I do, I've noticed." "So? So what? You ever think about her now?" Ayan took another bite of his ice cream before answering. "Sometimes every day?" "No. Every week?" "Maybe." Hamza nodded slowly. "That's better." "What is?" "You stop pretending you don't." Ayan smiled faintly. "I guess." The truth was, he did think about her. Just differently. Not with the excitement that once made him iron his shirts twice. Not with the nervousness that once made his heart race in crowded corridors. Instead, she appeared in small, unexpected moments. While passing the road where the coaching center stood. While opening an old notebook. While smelling the perfume he had once worn almost every coaching day. The memories no longer demanded attention. They simply arrived quietly. Stayed for a minute. Then left. One afternoon, Ayan's father returned home earlier than usual. That almost never happened. He sat down beside Ayan in the living room. "Want some tea?" "Sure." His mother disappeared into the kitchen. For a few moments, father and son watched the news in silence. Then his father spoke. "You worked hard this year." Ayan looked at him. "I tried." His father nodded. "I know." Another quiet pause. "You've grown up." The sentence caught Ayan by surprise. He almost laughed. "I'm still 16. "I know." His father smiled. "But you think differently now." Ayan didn't know what to say. Because his father was right. Somewhere between that lucky 91%, the coaching classes, the financial pressure at home, the endless revision, and the girl whose name he still didn't know, something inside him had changed. Not dramatically, not overnight, just quietly, like a season changing while nobody was paying attention. That night, before going to sleep, Ayan opened Instagram for the first time in several days. He scrolled absent-mindedly. Football clips, memes, friends posting stories after exams. Nothing interesting. He closed the app, then paused. His thumb hovered over the search icon for a second. Only a second. He smiled to himself. No, not because he was afraid. Because there was nothing left to search for. Some stories belonged exactly where they ended. He placed his phone on the bedside table, turned off the light. Outside, warm summer wind drifted through the slightly open window. Somewhere in the distance, a train horn echoed across the sleeping city. Ayan closed his eyes. For the first time in many months, his thoughts weren't about tomorrow. They were simply grateful for yesterday. Part 12 results were still weeks away. For most students, that waiting period was the hardest part. There were no exams left to prepare for, no teachers asking questions, no homework deadlines, only silence. And silence gave overthinking too much room. Ayan tried to keep himself busy. Some mornings he helped his mother with grocery shopping. Some afternoons he played cricket with Hamza. Sometimes he spent hours watching random documentaries or football highlights online. But every now and then, his eyes would drift toward the drawer where his coaching ID card rested. He never opened it. He simply knew it was there. Almost like a bookmark inside a chapter of his life. One evening, the electricity went out again. The entire neighborhood disappeared into darkness. Children immediately came outside. Someone brought a chair onto the street. A few neighbors gathered to escape the heat inside their homes. Ayan carried 2 cups of tea onto the roof. One for himself, one for his father. His father joined him a few minutes later. The city looked different without electricity. Only the distant buildings still glowed. The stars seemed brighter. They sat quietly for a while. Then his father spoke. You know, When I was your age, Ayan smiled. Here comes a story. His father laughed. It won't be that long. I know. When I was 16, I thought every small thing would matter forever. Ayan looked at him. Like what? A bad exam. A fight with a friend. Someone saying something rude. He paused, and sometimes he smiled to himself. A girl. Ayan almost dropped his tea. His father noticed immediately. What? Nothing. You reacted too quickly. I didn't. His father chuckled. I wasn't talking about you. I know. But someday he looked toward the dark horizon. You'll realize that life keeps moving. The things that seem enormous today slowly become beautiful memories. Ayan listened quietly. His father had no idea how accurately he had described the last few months. The following week, Hamza showed up at Ayan's house without calling first. He knocked loudly. Ayan opened the door. What happened? You've been sitting inside too much. So we're going out. Where? I don't know. Great planning. I know. An hour later, they were walking through a busy shopping area filled with bookstores, cafes, clothing shops, and families enjoying the evening. Hamza suddenly stopped outside a sneaker store. You still wearing the white ones? Yeah, the coaching shoes. Ayan looked down at them. They were slightly worn now. The bright white had faded. He smiled. I guess. You bought them for coaching, didn't you? Maybe. Hamza laughed. I knew it. They're just shoes. They're historic shoes. Ayan rolled his eyes. You'll never stop. No, they continued walking. After a while, they passed a perfume shop. Ayan caught a familiar scent drifting through the entrance. He stopped for half a second. It was the same fragrance he had worn almost every coaching day. Without realizing it, he smiled. Not because of the girl, because that smell reminded him of becoming someone who cared about how he presented himself, even if the reason had been a little ridiculous. Later that night, while cleaning his phone gallery, Ayan found an old selfie. It had been taken before one of his coaching classes. He remembered the day instantly. He had spent 15 minutes fixing his hair, changed shirts twice, sprayed perfume, cleaned his shoes, taken 7 selfies, deleted 6, kept 1. He stared at the picture, then laughed. I really thought I looked cool. He zoomed in. His hair looked almost exactly the same as every other day. Nothing had changed, except his confidence, or at least his attempt at confidence. He didn't delete the picture. Instead, he moved it into a folder named Old Memories. The days continued passing. Results grew closer. The closer they came, the quieter Ayan became. Not because he was scared of failing, because he was scared of disappointing everyone. 91% had changed the way people looked at him. This time, everyone expected another miracle. Sometimes, late at night, he wondered, what if it really was just luck? The thought stayed with him longer than he wanted. One afternoon, his mother entered his room carrying freshly folded clothes. She noticed he was staring out the window. Nervous? A little? She sat beside him. You know, if the result is good, we'll celebrate. And if it isn't? She smiled gently. We'll still have dinner together. He looked at her. She continued folding a shirt. You are not your marks, Ayan. The room became quiet. Those 6 words settled somewhere deep inside him. For the first time since the exams ended, the pressure eased just a little. Outside, the evening breeze carried the scent of rain. Clouds slowly gathered above the city. Somewhere beyond those streets, beyond the coaching center, beyond all the places that had quietly become memories, life was continuing for everyone, including a girl with pearl-like eyes who had probably forgotten about the awkward boy that accidentally walked into the wrong classroom months ago. And somehow, Ayan hoped she had, because some memories were kinder when they belonged to only one person. Part 13. The morning of the result felt different from every other morning. Not because the sky looked different, not because the city had changed. Everything outside remained exactly the same. The same street vendors, the same buses, the same neighbors sweeping outside their homes. Only the people waiting for their results carried a different kind of silence. Ayan woke up before sunrise. He wasn't trying to. His eyes simply opened. For a few seconds, he lay still, staring at the ceiling. Then he reached for his phone. No new messages. He put it back down. Too early. The result wouldn't be uploaded for another few hours. His mother was already in the kitchen. He could hear the familiar sound of tea boiling. When he walked in, she smiled. "You couldn't sleep either?" He smiled awkwardly. "Not really." She placed a cup in front of him. "Drink, what if?" She interrupted him before he could finish. "No what ifs today." He nodded quietly. By 9 o'clock, the house felt unusually restless. His younger cousin had already called twice. Hamza had sent 3 messages. "Bro? Result Aya? Website Kul Rahi?" Ayan replied with one word. "No." The board's website kept crashing. Every student in the city seemed to be refreshing the same page. 10 minutes passed. 20, 30, nothing. His father, who normally remained calm, walked into the room carrying his own phone. "Still loading?" "Yeah, we'll wait." Nobody spoke after that. 3 people, 3 phones, 1 website, 1 result. Finally, the page loaded. Ayan typed his roll number carefully. His hands felt strangely cold. He checked the number twice, then pressed enter. Loading, loading, loading. His heartbeat became louder with every passing second. Then the marks appeared. He stared. His father leaned closer. His mother stopped moving entirely. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then his father quietly smiled. 88. His mother looked at the screen again. 88, she smiled too. "I'm proud of you." Ayan blinked. 88, not 91, not another miracle. Just 88. For a brief second, disappointment tried to enter his thoughts, not because 88 was bad, because everyone had expected something even bigger. Then he looked at his parents. Neither of them looked disappointed. His father gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "You worked honestly. That's enough." Those words meant more than the number on the screen. Calls began arriving almost immediately. Relatives congratulated him. Friends compared percentages. Someone had scored 95, someone 76, someone hadn't passed one subject. The usual result day conversations filled every phone call. Hamza called next. "So?" 88, a short silence. Then, "Congratulations, idiot." Ayan laughed. "Thanks, you sound disappointed." "A little." Hamza sighed dramatically. "You people are impossible." "What? If I got 88, my family would carry me through the streets." Ayan laughed again. "You'll do fine. I hope so." Another pause. Then Hamza asked, "So, what? You joining first-year coaching?" Ayan hadn't thought about it. "I guess. Same. Maybe we'll end up together again." Hopefully, before ending the call, Hamza added one more sentence. "You know, if you go back." Ayan smiled before Hamza even finished. "I'm not asking about her." Hamza laughed loudly. "I didn't even say anything. You didn't have to." That evening, Ayan opened the drawer containing his coaching ID card. He picked it up slowly. The small photograph still looked awkward. The corners of the plastic had started wearing out. He ran his thumb across his own picture. So much had happened between the day that photo was taken and today. Not huge events, tiny ones. Walking through crowded corridors, pretending not to look, buying new shirts, cleaning white shoes, deleting a fake account, blocking someone he'd never even followed, studying harder than he ever had before. Growing up, he placed the card back exactly where it had been. Then, closed the drawer. Life moved surprisingly fast after the results. Admission forms appeared. Colleges announced merit lists. Friends started talking about future plans. Some wanted engineering. Some dreamed of medicine. Others still had no idea. Ayan belonged to the last group. He wasn't certain what he wanted, only that he wanted to make life a little easier for his parents one day. That thought alone felt big enough. A week later, while walking home after submitting admission documents, Ayan found himself passing the same road where the coaching center stood. Almost without thinking, he slowed down. The building looked alive again. New students climbed the stairs. Fresh admission banners covered the entrance. Parents stood outside asking questions. Everything looked exactly like the day he had first arrived months ago. Except, none of the faces were familiar anymore. A new batch had already begun writing its own memories inside those walls. Ayan stood there for less than a minute, then quietly smiled. Life really didn't wait for anyone. He turned to leave. As he reached the corner of the street, a white car stopped briefly outside the coaching entrance. The passenger door opened. A girl stepped out wearing a loose black hoodie and light blue baggy jeans. She adjusted the strap of her backpack before walking toward the building. For a split second, Ayan thought it was her. His heart reacted before his eyes could. Then the girl turned. She wasn't. Not even close. He laughed softly at himself. Some habits disappeared slowly. He placed both hands inside his pockets and continued walking home beneath the warm afternoon sun, leaving the coaching center behind once again, unaware that life had one more surprise waiting for him, one he never expected to arrive.
Before you go, one tiny thing. This story is based on true events, but all the names are fictional. So don't start looking at every Ayan around you like, was that you? Be nice. We'll continue this in the next part because this story is way too long for one video. See you in part 2 because trust me, it only gets crazier from here.